Hi, I'm Lauren Epstein, your host here on You're Hired. You're listening to another episode of us talking about jobs and careers. And this episode is going to be very different than any other episode because I have honestly no idea what we're going to be talking about. But I've got two of the brightest minds in work and talent acquisition. One of them. These are the folks, if you have applied to a job in the last 2,000 years, these guys probably had some impact on your experience. So with me today, I've got Gerry Crispin. Gerry is a lifelong student of recruiting and the co-founder of CareerXroads. CareerXroads is a community of talent acquisition leaders from more than 100 multinational employers who share strategies and practices as members of this brain trust. Gerry is also the co-founder of Talent Board. We talked about Talent Board in our last episode around the Candy Awards, and Gerry is behind that wonderful innovation. And he's also behind the scenes of ATAP, which is the Association of Talent Acquisition Professionals, launched earlier in 2017. And it's growing every day. They're getting new members joining around the world, recruiters and other talent acquisition professionals. He's also an international speaker, author, and acknowledged thought leader. Gerry stays grounded by engaging with an extraordinary network of friends, colleagues, and practitioners every day. Clearly not the folks on the show today. Gerry, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Also on the show, we got Lou Adler. If you know anything about talent acquisition, you have heard about Lou and read some of his writings, which are fantastic. Lou's the CEO and founder of the Adler Group, a consulting and training firm implementing performance-based hiring at companies around the world. Lou is also the author of an Amazon top 10 bestseller entitled Hire with Your Head, published by John Wiley & Sons, and also The Essential Guide for Hiring and Getting Hired, was published in 2013, and the lynda.com performance-based hiring video training program, which was done last year in 2016. Lou is one of the top bloggers on LinkedIn's influencer program, writing about the latest trends in hiring, employment, and recruiting. His articles, quotes, and research can be found on Inc. magazine's website, also Business Insider, Bloomberg, Society for Human Resource Management, and the Wall Street Journal. Welcome to the show, Lou.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Lauren.
So I was telling these guys earlier that the one thing different about this show than any other show that we've done is that I couldn't think of a good title because both of these guys know so much about so much. I didn't know how to pigeonhole it. But so the title I came up with is What is Still Not Working with Work? And I think the genesis was really out of an article I read by Lou recently where he went to speak with recruiters around the country and probably internationally. And the consensus that he got was that hiring managers are the problem in hiring people. And we were talking, and fundamentally, Lou was saying, and we'll get him to talk about this, is that it's too easy to change jobs. And employee engagement, which is how happy we all are at work, still hasn't changed in decades and decades, even though we're doing all these new things and all this, consultant of the day, brand new ideas, nothing's really changed. So I kind of thought because these guys are so smart and they got their finger on the pulse that we would just see what they had to say about what's going on right now here in 2017. So Lou, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I think when I talked to you earlier this week, and I probably talked to Gerry about this, but Gerry has a short memory, brilliant, but it doesn't last long. I made the contention that, and this is a question I've asked lots of people for years, but in the last probably 3 weeks, I probably asked to 1,000 recruiters and 200-300 hiring managers. I said, have you guys won the war for talent yet? Because there was a Fortune or Time magazine story 20 years ago, cover story, that said, hey, with the birth of the internet, ATS, job boards, the war for talent will be over. And now we have LinkedIn, we have all these great new tools, but nothing's changed. It's exactly the same. And the reality of it is the supply of great talent is finite, but the demand isn't. Everybody wants more of these people, but everybody can't have the same people. So there's so many different mathematical equations that impact that. So I make the statement is I think we actually have the strategy backwards. we're trying to be efficient, in my mind, doing the wrong thing. I would rather be efficient doing the right thing. And the right thing means that candidates shouldn't be applied, just be open-ended and apply for jobs. That's what the point I made. It was just too easy to change jobs. When you get aggravated at your boss. 20 years ago, it was hard to change jobs. And if you were aggravated for a fundamental reason, you didn't change. If you got aggravated for a fundamental strategic reason, it was okay to change. But if you got aggravated because it was just a bad day at the office, that's silly. But now everybody has bad days at the office. They look for another job. If they're good, they find another job, and they take them for short-term reasons. And 6 to 9 months later, they're unsatisfied again. So to me, we created something we shouldn't have created, and now people are trying to solve that problem. And I say, hey, let's start over from the beginning. So that's where I get the contention is we made a mistake when we thought the internet was going to solve the problem. I contend it created problems.
I can't find fault with any of that, Lou. I'm not so sure I go with the same kind of solutions, but there's no question that there's little change both in throughput and output over the last 10, 20 years. If you look at almost any of the performance indicators, people are pretty much doing the same kind of thing. Clearly, there's, just in the things that you said, there's several problems that obviously need to be addressed. One is the kind of coaching people get as they grow in terms of thinking about a job, thinking about a career, and thinking about how that fits into the rest of their life as well. Because clearly, there's an awful lot of people making bad decisions about work for the reasons that you made a point of. They get irritated or upset, and if they can, they leave. I got to tell you, though, that for every person who easily finds another job, as you pointed out, there's an awful lot of people who will never find that other job, who fundamentally flop around all the time trying to find another job and need a hell of a lot of coaching in order to get it. So there are some people who get great jobs whenever they want them and may be doing it for the wrong reasons. But there's a huge number of people who, by and large, need to know more about themselves and how they need to compete for jobs and develop the skills and competencies for the jobs that do exist. And they're not getting that kind of help or that kind of coaching either.
We were talking to Bill Drayton, previous episode, who Bill is the CEO and founder of Ashoka, which talks about how there's a huge number of people in this country that are not employed and they're not captured in the unemployment number, and they're kind of never going to get employed. And so
right.
I know those aren't the people we're talking about, but
I'm talking about those people.
You're talking about those people.
I am too.
Yeah, but
Sure.
I think now you're kind of you've taken a group of people, let's say 20% of the workforce, who has a serious problem. I'm looking at 80% of the workforce. This is what people do. They go off track. That's exactly. I know that's not an unimportant issue, but if you want to solve the issue of, hey, we have real jobs for real people for 80% of the workforce, let's focus first on those 80% of the workforce. And then the other 20% is not an insignificant problem. And I don't want to minimize. In fact, I'm working with a rural community at a big state who's got that exact issue. But it's a different issue than the hiring issue. So as Gerry was talking, I remember from a search I had many, many years ago. And I think every candidate, everybody looking for a job, to take advice. A candidate called me up and he decided not to take an offer from my client. Now, I'm a third-party recruiter, so he decided not to take an offer from my client. I said, John, why aren't you taking the offer? And then he listed what he was going to get on the day he started, what the job title was, which was better, what the drive was better, and a better title, and a shorter drive and a little bit more money. And I said, John, you've just made a long-term strategic decision using short-term tactical information. Basically, he made 90% of his decision based on what he was going to get on the day he started. When I went through what he could do and become as a result of changing this other job, yes, it was 5% less money, it was a 15-more-minute drive, the title was slightly less. I said, John, just think about it overnight. And when he kind of put his mind out of the emotions of what he got on day one, he came back and said, Lou, I am going to take your offer, which was a slightly bigger title. He calls me 9 months later and said, I've just been named, and it turned out to be VP Operations for 6 manufacturing companies in the West Coast. But I'm going to contend that 90% of candidates make that short-term decision when they should be making long-term decisions. Now, that doesn't solve the other 20%, but it solves the 80% of candidates who are working today, who are skilled, who can get good jobs, and then when you look at what companies put on their job postings, they put all what they get on the short term. Then they write a job of what you must have to get this. So you start looking at, let's solve the 80% problem before we focus on the 20% problem. And I'm not minimizing it, but I want to focus on the 80%. How do we solve that problem of people who can do the work and can get jobs in today's workforce?
Well, Lou, do you think that some of the problem lies with larger companies that may not be as agile or as capable of adapting to some of the needs of folks out there? Let's assume that some of them are, making decisions for the right reasons. But I'll give you one example that it seems kind of odd to me, that increasingly many people should be able to do the job from wherever they are. Not necessarily have to go physically to an office or a
You're
space.
talking about IBM's article yesterday.
And IBM's article just recently raised the same issue that we've been seeing now for a couple of years, that large corporations are saying, I'm not saving a lot of money by doing this, and it's just a pain in the ass to work with people who are working from home and keep them motivated. So since I'm not going to train hiring managers to be able to work with remote workers, let's just make them all come to work.
Now, just so everyone knows, that this is an article that was published on CNN Tech called IBM Tells Employees Working at Home to Get Back to the Office.
Yeah, here's an irony of a company.
Again, so let me kind of address that issue, because I think it's an important issue. I think you got it back.
Some of the remote work capabilities, and now is telling their entire workforce, think about it. If you can't make a decision the next few weeks and apply for a job at IBM, we're just going to, let you go.
Again,
right.
let me kind of make my...
They're saying 40%. So hang on. Almost 200,000 of the 400,000 people worldwide do not have a traditional office that they go to. And that was back about 10 years ago.
But this is where I think people get screwed up. I think the problem is IBM has had X number of quarters, 16 quarters of underperformance. Now, so let's solve the problem. Okay, why is it truly the issue that people who work on job A at home versus job B in the office underperform? If that's the case, it's a perfectly logical strategy to do. We haven't seen that, so we're instantly making a judgment that it's a bad strategy. I don't know if it's a bad strategy or not. We're concluding information without the information.
No, well, there's some evidence that
so
one would
kind of address the issue. What I try to do is when I
hang on, guys. Hang on, Lou. Wait 1 second. Jerry is responding.
Yeah, I'm just saying. You put the A/B testing right there, Lou. But come on, tell me, what do you think is the actual solution to that? Do you really think that if we had the data from an A/B testing, that the problem is that people who are home perform less than those who are in some kind of box?
I don't know that. I can't conclude that.
The way
you can, but I don't make those decisions.
Are managed.
What I do, so let me now here's what I said earlier about, which kind of ties both pieces together. I said hiring managers are the problem. I think those job descriptions are the problem, and hiring managers still focus on skills and experience. I focus on what a person can do and become, because I want to attract someone who sees the job, who's both motivated and competent to do the work and sees the job as a career move. Now let's go to the other issue. You have a job that a person needs to perform, whatever that job is. 3 or 4 performance objectives. Hey, you got to design a circuit, you got to collaborate with the marketing people, you got to launch it here, you got to put a report together and present it to the executive team. If that's the job, then you can say, hey, can someone working at home do that job? I don't know that answer, but I know what the job is. So I think this is, again, it's not BS. You could say it's BS, but without data, to me, that's kind of silly in my mind. You got to have the data to say, first, let's define the job, let's see who can do the job. And if I do a benchmark study and find 100 people and 80 of them who work in the office do it better than the 20 who don't, fine. But without knowing the job and without doing that, you can't then make the conclusion, all the other conclusions you fall into, that it's bad or good. I don't know if it's bad or good. I haven't seen the results. I do know that IBM is underperforming for 16 quarters, and that to me sounds that they got to do something to shake up the organization. So to me, it seems like a pretty cool idea. Without knowing the data, I could be totally wrong, but it seems like the right thing to do. You need a shake up, and I think hiring needs a shake up. So I don't think it's BS.
So Lou,
it's a great idea.
Lou, do you think that they have the data? You think they're making this as a database decision?
You're suggesting that they're making a good decision because they've underperformed for 16 quarters, so they might as well do some A/B testing by bringing people in and suddenly seeing if they're going to work.
No, I'm saying that obviously I'm going to assume they've done some evaluation on that and have concluded that's the case. I don't know that they have it. They haven't done it, and it is BS. It's a stupid knee-jerk reaction. Again, it's using short-term data to make a long-term decision. I don't know that, but as I know you're an engineer, Gerry, just like I am. You have to have the data to make the decision. That's a huge, big strategic decision they're making. I don't know that it's the correct one, but my assumption is they're a pretty logical big company. They probably
should
make
have
the right
data,
decision. If they're a big logical company and made a stupid decision, they're going to have another quarter, another 16 quarters
Hang on, Lou.
performance.
Hang on. Gerry was saying something.
No, I'm fine with it. Lou makes a great argument. You really need to have the data. And here I see corporations, large corporations, famous corporations like IBM, making decisions without, and there was nothing in any of what they described of what they're doing that suggested that they had systematically collected any kind of data to make that evaluation.
So you think fundamentally, because I don't want to just talk about IBM.
I'm open to hearing it, but
hang on,
I doubt it very much.
Not just to talk about IBM, but because I think you're both raising a really good point. Clearly, there is some breakdown in our working system. I think one of the things you're both pointing to is the short-sightedness of the decisions that are made, that they're not based on what's going to be, where do we need to be in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, and how can I make decisions now that are going to impact that? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I agree. I think people have the short-term focus. It's just the same thing as a candidate. So you look at the company level, I think managers are focused on the short-term. I got to fill the position. Candidates are focused on I got to get a better job. The systems are designed for this short-term efficiency approach as opposed to the career approach. So I think, you look at it, and to me, that's when you look at all of these issues, to me, it's a strategic issue because we're focusing on the tactics, not the strategy.
And what we know, because we when we spoke to Bill from Ashuke, we were talking about, and we can all agree that things are changing so fast, and they're just changing faster and faster and faster, that we do need to have these long-term strategies. We can't just be thinking about the quarter, because that kind of thinking kind of got us where we are today, where 15 years ago, about half the companies that were on the Fortune 500 list are not there anymore.
Yeah, but that happened that's not, before the internet, that was happening in 1920. When you look at 1950, the same companies are gone. So,
and it's accelerating,
I think companies have
but it's accelerating.
Life cycle, so I don't know that you can blame it on what's happened in the last 10 or 15, 20 years.
No, but it's accelerating. I mean, the companies are falling away faster, and they're falling away faster because of the things have been changing since 1700, right? Technology, innovation, all these things have required us to be different as workers.
Well, I think there's another aspect to this, too, and that is within corporations, we tend to make decisions about people who can do the job and want to do the job today, as opposed to considering those individuals that might be trainable to be able to do the job tomorrow. And that obviously requires a longer-term point of view, but most corporations really have failed to make better decisions around whether you should build or buy the talent that we're looking for. And so the focus on getting talent that is capable of doing the job immediately, I think, is one that's flawed and that would offer tremendous opportunity for a lot more people to be capable of getting involved with the company, learning what's needed to learn and doing it.
Yeah, and it's interesting is that more companies are now offering internal learning and development groups to make up for this delta, but yet at the same time they're not saying up front, hey, we'll take you at 60 or 70% of what the job needs, and we'll get you there to 100% in 8 months or 16 months.
I think there's
your training, I think there's two dimensions. One is can someone do the job?
Hang on. I don't know if you guys can hear each other. So,
or they're looking for
Gerry, hang on.
People who can do the job immediately.
Hang on, Gerry. Hold on, because I don't know if you guys can hear each other. Lou, why don't you go, and then when you're done.
What Gerry's saying is there's two dimensions to that. Can someone do the job today, and can someone do it in the future? No question. But I think let's talk about someone do it today. The judgment that companies make, as somebody can do it today, is having a bunch of skills and experience. That's called experience qualified. A lot of people can do that job today based on what I call performance qualified. And that's why I say I define what does great success on the job look like. It's performance qualified. Okay, you got to make quota in 6 months. That's performance qualified. You got to design a circuit in 9 months to meet certain parameters. That's performance qualified. Now, there's a lot of people who can be performance qualified, can do the job and motivated to do the job and is satisfied doing the job, but that's where it goes back to the silly job descriptions. If you define jobs as what people need to do to be successful rather than what people need to have to be successful, you get the logic right. If someone can do the work, they obviously have the skills. And in fact, I would make the contention that people in the top half have less skills. That's what put them in the top half. They get promoted faster. They get assigned bigger projects faster. And if you go performance qualified, you open up the pool to all the diverse candidates, all these people with different mix of experiences who can do the work. So now that solves problem A. Problem B is the training and getting people who need training. But again, it's mixing two problems in the same, two ideas and two alternate scenarios within the same problem. I think if you focus on performance qualified, you can have your cake and you can eat it too.
The issue here for me is that most corporations, when they have openings, do not make decisions about buy versus build. And if they did, then they could be much more focused in the way that Lou is talking about.
And I love that because I personally believe that most companies should be building more people. Not all people, but definitely building more people because it gives folks room to grow, but also a reason to be more engaged with what's going on. I mean, if they think that there's a room for them to go up a career path, then they'll hang around, they'll be more engaged, and they'll learn. And it feels like at some point we forgot that human beings grow, that we learn, that we're not the same every year, that we can accomplish more day by day.
Well, it also suggests what candidates should be asking about that has more relevance for them, both short and long term. The data does exist now that would help us better understand and map what would happen to someone who successfully performs in a given job. Where there's sufficient data within that corporation that's easily accessible that would show what options those individuals have as they progress from a successful point of view. And much of that data is never shared with the candidate in advance.
Well, I think that's a real important point. Think about, and I think your point too, so let me kind of figure out how to at least make a statement that ties them both together. I think when we have an employee internally who's a strong employee in the top half, there's this natural idea, hey, I'm going to promote Lauren, I'm going to give him a bigger job, have him do a little bit more work. We stretch our people who are in the top half. We kind of give the people, and particularly those in the top quartile, they get these better projects, get more exposure to senior executives. They're naturally expanded because it's logical to do that. When we promote from the outside, we change the rules. They have to have 10 years of experience. So we focus on skills and experience when we hire from the outside. When we promote people internally and know people internally, we naturally do those things to our good people. So I think when you start looking at the inside decision to promote or move people or train people, it's different than we take someone from the outside. We avoid all of that because the risk is too high to hire someone from the outside. And to me, when you start looking at it is, hey, if we could hire people from the outside the same way we develop people on the inside, we'd obviously start getting better results. And I think all those pieces would then tie together more efficiently. And that's why I say I think the existing hiring process, which is what we're talking about, is fundamentally flawed, and that kind of is one piece of the proof.
What do you think, Lou, is going to change that?
I'm trying to, Gerry, let's say this. So I don't want to make a commercial of this. This is what I do with my clients, and I'm fighting this battle every single day, one search at a time. And those that have actually done it have actually seen great success. But it's a small batch, high touch process. It's not this efficiency scalable. It's actually caring about people one on one. Hey, you're taking this job. Don't screw it up. Make a long term decision. And I think internally people do care about the people who work for them when we bring it to the outside because, again, we got hundreds. Even Lever shows 150 people have to apply to get one job. Greenhouse, it was 300 people to get one job. Smart Recruiters was about 180 people to get one job. This is
Talent
so how do you deal with all this quantity
data, which actually
and trying to make people feel good.
More focused.
That to me is the problem. We let people
well, hang on, Lou. Hang on. Wait, Gerry was saying something. Gerry, go.
But I hadn't finished my thought.
Oh, okay. All right, Gerry, you hold on. Lou, you go.
Go.
So that's my point is that because we've opened the switch of just applying easily and letting anybody apply to jobs, the solution is we have to have some scalable, efficient solution. And we've taken the personalization out of it. That goes back to the original problem is we've opened up the box to the wrong solution.
Gerry?
Well, you make sense, Lou, from that perspective. I think one of the shifts that's taken place is access to an awful lot more data than we've ever had before, and not making as much use of it as we might. The reality is I think there's a lot more data that's available that helps both sides make better decisions, so we don't have to bitch about the job description because we really have truly potential for accessing a great deal more that can help both sides make a better decision in relation to that. And fundamentally, I think that's one of the key areas that's missing. Is that for every you made the point that 200 people apply for every job. 200 people should not be applying for every job because 200 people aren't qualified for each and every job, and there should be sufficient information that they can, from a self-service point of view, learn that as they develop their interests within that job, without even getting recruiters involved at that particular juncture.
I want to interject here for a second because something I've learned recently, and it's my experience, is I think men applying to jobs and women applying to jobs, it's a very different mindset. If there's 10 criteria and a woman says, well, I only have 6 or 7, they won't apply. But if a man only has 6 or 7, they'll apply thinking that they can learn on the job. And a lot of us who get jobs outside of applying got jobs that were a little bit more than what we could do. So there's a certain conditioning that I've had where I got hired for a job and all of a sudden it expanded. It was much bigger than what I thought. So this notion of is the job description, is what companies are communicating to people accurate? I don't know if we've really been training people for that.
We haven't, and I think that's really the issue now that's a lot of issues raised there. I contend this is where I talked to one, I'll call it probably the major job board in the world. I talked to him. I was there at a product design meeting, and they were asking me, and they had this very attractive apply button. They said, what do you think about this? People could do it when they're texting in their car. What do you think? I said, I think you should eliminate it because you make it too easy. Why don't you just there's a simple, and I think Gerry's 100% right. You could say, this job is not for you, Gerry. You're not qualified for this under any circumstances. But you still apply anyway. So I'm not sure if it's man versus women. I don't think people read them. I think how can you possibly read it when you're texting and you see it on your cell phone? People don't read those job descriptions. They see the title, they see the company, and said, I'm going to apply. So I think 90% of the people who apply, particularly the unqualified, the 190 or the 149 out of 150 who are not qualified, let's say 145, they shouldn't apply to begin with. There should have been some stoppage to prevent them from applying to begin with. Candidates should do it on their own, but they can't do it because they got to compete with the other 145 people. So everybody it's this mad rush to apply. And I think if you could stop it there, now all of a sudden you could add some personalization. Hey, this person looks pretty good. You, the candidate, actually spend time applying and looking at this. This job does make sense.
Right. And I'm convinced we had a better method for self-servicing around the on the job. There would be an extraordinarily powerful path for those who are in fact qualified for the job and interested. So that's one piece of it. The other is, I think most corporations fail miserably in terms of how they reject candidates. And if we learned how to reject candidates in a way that engaged them to think more about how they can compete for jobs, whether or not it's in that company or some other company, we would all be better off.
Right.
And the companies that are developing tools to accomplish that, in my opinion, are winning.
See, I have a different mindset on that. I don't want to talk to people I'm not going to hire. I don't want to have a candidate experience for people I'm not going to hire. So if I stop them at the gate so they never get into a position where I have to be nice to them. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. I go after people who are largely passive candidates. I pre-identify people. I treat those like they're gods. I give them snacks. I drive them on a nice tour bus. So I don't drive them to a metro bus A to B. Hey, let's go for a ride. Let's have a discussion. I do it the way good people, my UX, and it's the U and user, is the ideal candidate who sees this job as a great career move. I benchmark how those people make decisions, how they want to be treated. So I'm building this process up on, hey, I don't need to deal with 150 people. I need to deal with 15 or 20 people who are pre-selected who see this job as a good move, and I'm going to treat those people like kings.
Okay,
because
so how do we...
Everything Gerry said is exactly right.
Lou,
They'll also give me great referrals. They'll become part of my deep network, and they will get better careers, and I'll get better candidates from that process. It's just a different mindset of how to treat it. I don't want to treat high volume. I want to treat good people who see this job as a great career move, and if it takes months or years to work with them, that's fine with me. Different mindset.
Your host, Lauren Epstein, and we are talking to Gerry Crispin and Lou Adler, and they are just going about 50 miles a second here. So, Lou, how does a company, what are the solutions for people who are listening to the show to kind of apply this philosophy?
Okay, so here's what I would tell a candidate. If you see a job that you're reasonably qualified for, do not push the apply button. You will not get it. You will be one of 150. You have to somehow do some deep networking and find someone in your company who can get you referred. Someone who's referred gets to the top of the resume list. Even the data shows that if you get referred, is that you increase your probability of getting that job by 10 times. So you're not 1 in 5 or 1 in 140, 1 in 150, you're 1 in 15. That is a huge win. Now, you have to prove you're qualified to do that. And I remember a young guy who just got his MBA out of Italy. He told me this. He called me about 5 years ago. We wanted to be in telecommunications at the time, and he called me. I didn't know he was in Italy. I told the guy, don't apply. And I just somehow connected with him on LinkedIn. I said, why don't you do he wanted to be in telecommunications in Europe. I said, why don't you do a competitive analysis of all the companies you want to work for? Just put the companies across the top and put the 5 or 6 criteria that would make them competitive, and call the VP marketing of each company and say you'd like to spend 20 minutes talking with them about this project. He calls me up a month later and said, I got 3 interviews as a result of that. I mean, so it's don't follow the leader. Just kind of think on your own. Be creative. If you're good and you're creative and you're remarkable, prove it, but don't do it. Don't try to be one of 150. Try to be one of 10 or one of 15.
Okay, that's one technique. Gerry, you got anything?
Yeah, it's a different way of saying what Lou said. So let me take it in parts. Because it really is a data-based, it's an evidence-based approach. And fundamentally, it's what works. So Lou was talking about getting referred. Well, the issue is by whom, and the key is getting referred by someone inside the company. So I would agree absolutely. Do not ever apply to a company where you do not have a person inside that company referring you. Getting someone to refer you inside a company is a trivial task today. There is some affinity between you and someone in just about every company, whether they worked at a company you worked at, whether they went to a school that you went to, etc. You can find that information out quickly. And fundamentally, the reason why you do that is because if 100 people apply to a job, I can assure you that the data suggests that only 4 of those 100 have been referred by an employee inside the company. Of the 4, 2 are likely not to have the enough qualifications in order to go further. But I will absolutely tell you that the 2 who are minimally qualified for the job will always be among the finalists. So what that translates from a probability point of view is that if you are referred, you have a 20% chance of getting the job. If you are not referred, you have a 1.2% chance of getting the job.
Wow, that's amazing.
And
yeah, I agree.
The reality is,
exactly the point.
The person getting
the
the job may not
be
be,
Gerry, how you can make the connection to the company.
May not be the best person for the company.
Wait, hang on, Lou, hang on, Lou, hang on. Gerry's talking.
And that's the data that works.
Yeah, I can say that.
Makes sense.
I've had the personal experience of applying to a company through LinkedIn. Like I made a contact through LinkedIn. The contact is the one that brought me in. I didn't apply through the job posting, and I got the job. So it's so funny because do you think, so let's talk about that for a minute, because it's very, like you're saying, Gerry, it's very easy to do. Should I reach out to the CEO or should I have a third person make that introduction? What's the difference?
Neither. I mean, if you know the CEO, God bless you.
No, I'm saying if I don't know the CEO, but I can contact him on LinkedIn.
Wait a minute. What is the job you're looking for God's sake? You know, if it's a director level position, that's one thing. If you're looking for something 5 levels down,
well, that's what I'm saying. I'm actually talking about me, right? So I'm
could be a lot of problems with the obstacles.
Let me respond.
You know, I could look on LinkedIn and find 5 people who will refer me inside of 90 seconds. Why would I spend hours and days trying to get to the CEO if I can achieve the same kind of thing with a few quick searches on either LinkedIn or a number of other sources that one has at your disposal?
Well, let me reframe it, Gerry. So I'm talking about, like, I think of it in my level, right? So I always report to a C-level executive. So if it's someone who would normally report to a C-level executive, for those who are listening, there may be 1 or 2. Yeah. Would you say reach out directly to the CEO?
No,
or
let me respond to that, Lauren. Let me respond.
Yeah.
Gerry is talking about a referral. It's someone who would say, yeah, you went to some school. Oh, yeah, sure, I'll refer you. I didn't realize we had a job there. So this is a peer or a manager. It's somebody, that's a referral. Now you're talking about contacting the potential boss in the future. That's different than a referral. Now, if you could get someone who knows that potential boss, that's something different to do. But they're mutually exclusive. They're not the same thing that Gerry's talking about.
No, I know, but I'm trying to make the distinction between, because LinkedIn is such a cool tool, should I do what you're saying as a referral? In other words, go to somebody in the company that would refer me, irrespective of my connection to them, and then the connection all the way through, or should I contact someone directly at the company who might be my boss or who may be my boss's boss?
You try both. I think the referral is going to get you to the boss. So we say, hey, I know this guy, Lauren. He's the guy you should spend 15 minutes with on the phone. Mm-hmm. You're just going to get it if the boss trusts somebody and doesn't trust you.
Right.
There's a higher probability you'll get the connection.
Right. I think that's great advice. Anything else you guys have to offer on this one? That was a good one.
Well, I think do your homework and be prepared.
That goes without saying. It's like,
you've got one, if you get the chance, and I would actually schedule. Don't call it a meeting. Don't call it an interview. Hey, I'd just like to chat with you about this idea I have. So if you can come up with some kind of idea, some kind of way, you read an article, and you think you have some way to do it. So the other point is be kind of creative. Like this guy in Italy, I gave him the idea, but I think he took it on his own some way. But I think if you're prepared, you understand what the company's doing, you look at what companies are hiring in certain areas. So I think you don't necessarily need a job posting either. There is a hidden market. I mean, let's be real frank. The hidden job market starts before it's ever posted. If a manager thinks he's got a new product line, they're going to first go internally. Then they're going to say, hey, who have I worked with in the past? So I think developing a deep network of people who are connected in your industry so you get tapped into the hidden market before the job becomes public, you're in the game. And the beauty, and this is Gerry's other point, Gerry's point about the 2 people who got the job, Gerry said they were just minimally qualified. The reason they got hired regardless is because they were performance qualified. Somebody said, this person's a hard worker, will never give up, consistent reliability. That oversets years of experience. And again, it's if you're somehow connected with somebody in some level of an acquaintance rather than a stranger, the rules of hiring are fundamentally changed. And that's why you've got to become
the caveat, though, is you have to get up to bat. If you don't get up to bat, it doesn't matter how qualified you are on anybody's scale. So the truth of the matter is, it is being able to get up to bat that counts here. Another approach that a lot of people can do if they happen to be skilled, especially from a writing point of view, is to go to a publication within your field, tell them that you want to do an article for them. Would they consider it? And if they say yes, and you have an interesting idea, now you can, in effect, call a number of people who are in that industry and tell them that you would like to interview them in order to write the article. And that's one way to start building an interesting network of folks. You end up talking to a lot of people who are in a position to either refer you or hire you. You do some really good work in terms of writing that article. You get it published, and now you can send it back to them and continue the conversation. It's another way of building and reinforcing your network, as well as demonstrating that you know something about the field you're trying to get hired for.
I have a really good idea. Get a radio show on a public radio station and get to talk to some awesome people.
Yeah, there you go.
I know someone who did this.
Yeah, we're talking to him.
But I think the point is being creative and thinking out of, hey, how do I differentiate myself and getting to bat? I mean, that's sales 101 too. You got to get to bat. You got to be in front of the customer. And I would say don't go in a transactional sales mode. Go in a discovery sales mode. Find what someone has a need.
So let's talk about that.
Be in a position to fulfill that need.
That's great. If someone's not in sales, talk about the discovery versus the transactional.
Yeah, transactional is out of a catalog. You go to Amazon. I just bought some Ely coffee pods. I went there. I bought it, and 3 minutes later. Discovery is when somebody has a complicated solution. You got to go to the customer and say, "Hey, what are your needs? Let me understand it." And you come back. And it might take one or two meetings, and you say, okay, here's how I would solve that problem. So you got to figure out the problem and offer a custom solution. And I think recruiting is like that. When I go after candidates, I'm looking for people who would, number one, I understand my client's needs, what's the problem they want solved, and I find candidates who would see that job as fulfilling their needs. So it's kind of like a discovery process on two sides. But discovery is really this problem solving. It's slower paced. It's an understanding of the real challenges, and there's challenges on both sides of the table. And I think if you take that approach, which is what Gerry's saying, get to bat and don't treat it as an interview. Ask the company, hey, what are some of the problems you have? Let me see if I can help you solve them. And so it's a little different approach when you think of it that way.
Right, and today with information being so easily accessible, you can have great questions by finding out what's going on with the company on the internet or through trade publications.
Yeah, I'd say don't wait for the posting. I mean, you can see all the companies that have problems and challenging and launching new products. I mean, Apple just announced. I mean, I know what's going on with the Apple next September, hopefully next September, but even the year later, what's going to happen? You start thinking about, so that's just because I follow that product, but nonetheless, you could follow your industry. What's happening? What companies are involved in that? Obviously, this company is building state-of-the-art environmental control systems. I just read a big report. They got this new building contract. They haven't posted the jobs yet, but hey, they probably are going to be hiring people in 3 to 6 months for these positions. So kind of think of ahead. Don't just wait for the job posting. Get it there ahead of time.
Yeah, here in Arlington,
the
Nestle.
higher you go, and I think it's true, the more experienced you are, that you really do have to craft it your own way. I also believe that increasingly more mature professionals really need to be working from a project point of view. There has to be a clear problem that they are being hired to solve. Otherwise, why bother with that?
Of course, yeah.
So and they can go from company to company and project to project much more ably as they grow from a maturity point of view.
So here in Arlington, the Nestle Corporation, it was announced months and months ago that Nestle was going to be coming in because they had a building transaction. And of course, now you know that they're hiring a recruiter and they're going to be hiring tons of people for jobs. And it was not private information. It was quite public.
Right. I mean, it's always public. I mean, Amazon's building a big warehousing system in Madison, Wisconsin. because they did a study that was on Career Builder of workforce planning and supply demand. I mean, all this stuff's available, not all of it, but
right.
Certainly
you have to have a strategy to think ahead. So you have to know a little bit about what the job is that you currently are working in, where that might lead from a career point of view. Do you want to go there? What are the companies that downstream you would like to be associated with, and why? And then monitor some of those and start picking up on some of those things. As you said, all that data is there. It's visible. What it lacks from the candidate point of view is a coherent strategy about what their career is about. And if they have not learned about that and they have not gotten a coach to help them with that in the past, then perhaps now is the time to get that done.
So you're recommending someone who can support someone in building a long-term career strategy. If they can't hire a coach or there's no coach available, what other resources could people find to kind of come up with this big game plan of, Me Inc. for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years?
You're going to have to start reading some books then. The
like
reality is the easiest thing is, in fact, to get a coach or in some way, shape, or form. And yes, some of them can be expensive, especially as you have matured. But anybody at the C level who doesn't have a coach is an idiot in my case, in my estimation. They can all benefit by them, and they have the money to do it. You could be going back to your college and having conversations with career services. You could be doing a lot of things if you're younger and disposed to trying to figure it all out. But there's no question that you should be able to do that with the help of someone else, or if you insist that you've got to be able to do it yourself, then you need to be able to read a little bit, and then you still need to go to your peers and test your thinking against them. If you haven't done that, then there's no calibration, there's no self-correction then in terms of that, and you're not adapting to how things change.
Yeah, let me kind of swing in. I think the idea is don't look for a job when you're needy. Start looking ahead of time. Build your own personal network. Talk to people, as Gerry said. Benchmark that. But build a deep network of people who trust you, who are willing to introduce you to other people who they also trust. But I think if you can start looking at building your network when you're not looking for jobs, so be proactive. That way you'll hear about things before they come up, and then you start looking for things before they come up. You do those things in your area of specialty. I mean, yes, I think you need to read lots of books on how to do that, but from a practical standpoint, if you're reasonably intelligent, you don't need a coach when you're 22 or 23 or 24. You need a mentor, you need some advisors, you need some peers who you think are doing well, and seek out that advice and network with them, and I think that should get you on the right track to a great career.
So my name's Lauren Epstein. You've been listening to You're Hired. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to You're Hired on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. Thanks for listening to our show. If you're interested in getting on the show, you can give me a call at 240-876-0276 or follow us on Facebook at You're Hired. And you can join my meetup where we teach interview skills at interviewskillstogetthejob@meetup.com. Again, I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to You're Hired on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. Thanks for coming back. My name's Lauren Epstein. You're listening to You're Hired. With me is Gerry Crispin, Lou Adler. We've been talking about, one, what's kind of broken in the job space, but then what we can do about it, which is really take ownership of our own career by creating the right strategy and the right tactics around approaching our next job. You guys want to add anything else before we wrap up in a couple of minutes?
I'd be curious, Lou, what do you think from a global point of view as in terms of the extent to which other countries, in effect, are developing work and skills capabilities that are much more competitive than we are here in the U.S.?
Well, I'm not sure that they are, but I was in Europe about 2 months ago, and we had a bunch of recruiters and hiring managers from India, Bangladesh, Eastern Europe, Poland, Russia, Ukraine, and we talked about those issues. And I think the idea was it's universal. Understand what you want people to do. Understand what they can become if they do this well. Market in a slow manner. Give people the opportunity, whether they're performance qualified or potentially performance qualified, kind of change the rules of the game. And that goes back to the advice I give to candidates: is don't make long-term career decisions using short-term data. Now, that's easy to say when and it's hard to buy into that when you're desperate and you need to get back on the payroll. That's why I suggest is you got to kind of do all these things ahead of time and start thinking about your own career. Okay, am I in the right career path? Don't wait to get off the career path. Start thinking about what you have to do. So if you have the companies doing it the right way at the top, you have the individual doing it at the bottom, hopefully the bridge will come together in the middle sometime in the future. That's my goal. I haven't seen it happening yet, so I'm still a little bit cynical, but I know it can happen one job at a time and one individual at a time.
Gerry, any closing thoughts?
No, I like the one job, one individual at a time. The truth of the matter is, change is taking place today. So the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed, and the extent to which you want to influence that means that you have to act as an individual. In terms of what Lou was talking about, in terms of trying to change the world, through the efforts that he makes with every single client and every single training program that he has. And that really is the truth of it. People need to be able to not only act, but also share the results of how they've acted, so that we can spread the word and make change in a positive way.
Thank you, guys. You've been listening to Gerry Crispin and Lou Adler. Lou, how can folks reach out to you if they're interested in contacting you?
Yeah, I would go info@adlerconcepts.com, info@adlerconcepts.com, and I'd be happy to chat with them and arrange some kind of conversation or at least point them in the right direction.
And Gerry, if folks want to get a hold of you?
Well, you can Google Gerry Crispin if you can spell Gerry with a G and Crispin, crisp like bacon, I guess. And CareerXroads is my website. So,
well, you've been listening to Gerry Crispin, Lou Adler. I want to say the mother and father of this work, but I don't know. That's kind of weird.
The elders.
The elders. They are the elders, truthfully.
Yeah, no question about that.
Regardless of your interest in changing jobs, you should definitely read the material that Lou writes and Gerry writes. They are brilliant. They always have good stuff to talk about. And Gerry, I really loved what you said about the future is here, but it's not evenly distributed.
I'm quoting somebody else, but that's fine.
Yeah, well, you've been listening to You're Hired. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. We'll see you next week on Mondays at 10 a.m.